let's go ahead and get started with our first story. Now, this first story is interesting because there's nothing, I can't really find anything on it. And I know you're thinking, oh great, it's another one of those, Jason. It's another one where you say I can't find anything on it because alien blobs are erasing the internet. And that's not where I'm going with this. I think it's something that there is a particular group of people who are very, very interested in this, and they don't know about it. There are resources on this, but they're not very robust. And what we're going to talk about is this thing called the Ephesian Grammata, or the Ephesian Letters. So we're going back to 4th or 5th century BC. So we're way back in time at this point. People are walking around with like sandals, and I imagine the sun was a lot hotter in the past. I don't know why. I always think that. I always assume like the Romans are like, oh my God, it's so hot. And nowadays you would like just be like walking around in a sweater in Italy. I don't know. I assume everything was hotter in the past, and it's just gotten progressively more temperate. But anyway, so Romans are walking around. They're sweating. They're like all wet, just dripping wet everywhere. They got their vaginas that they put their swords in. That's a callback joke. On a statue of Artemis, they found these 6 words. And these are the words here. Askion, Kataskion, Lix, Tetrax, Daminanius, Asaya. Apparently, that's a spell. It's a protection spell. And and here's the thing, nobody really knows what it is. It's these 6 letters. They found those 6 words. They found those 6 words on like belts and amulets and things like that. And that's why historians have thought it's probably some sort of protection spell. And people have said, again, nobody's really saying I said this or I said this, but the general theory is that if you pronounce it correctly, it's a powerful protection spell. That's it. That's all the information we have, really, on this. And you're thinking, wait, Jason, you're going to keep talking about this for more than 2 minutes. Let's break it down for a second. So you're a historian. You find this statue of Artemis in Ephesus. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but I'm sure I mispronounced everything, the spell and everything. But you find it there, and people have spent a ton of time trying to figure out if the words are related, if they mean something else. People have had different theories as to, like, some people have said it means like shadow, shadowy, earth, moon, sun, or whatever. Other people have said it refers to 6 particular deities that you're calling upon for protection. But nobody knows. You're going to keep talking about this for more than 2 minutes. And so, generally, the way I prep stories on this show is I will find a particular subject that I'm like, that makes a good episode. I'll grab a couple resources, throw them in a text file. I'll look over it and make sure that it will be interesting. Throw it in a text file. Drop it in a folder. And then as I'm getting closer to prepping the episode, I'll grab that text file. I'm glad I'm telling you all this because now a hacker will just get in my computer and delete all my research. I actually only prep like a week ahead. It wouldn't be that big of a thing. But as I get closer to doing the episode, I'll pull the websites back up and then look at it for an additional like 5 or 6 or whatever. So I'll usually start off with 2 or 3 and then I'll find more resources. When I was doing that to prep this episode, everything was just kind of saying the same thing. We don't know what this is. We think it's a spell that existed 400 years before the birth of Christ. So, I mean, if you want to talk about like ancient magic, this is it. I mean, outside of stuff in the Old Testament, which really isn't spells. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there's claims of magic in the Old Testament, like Moses throwing his staff and it turning into a snake. What's interesting about that story is that in Christianity, there's this whole thing like, black magic is bad and it doesn't work. And everything comes from the divine. I'm bastardizing it, really. But you know what I mean? Like, generally, like, all strength comes from God. But in that story, in the Old Testament, the Egyptian pharaohs, viziers, or whatever you called them, his magicians, they threw their staffs down and they turned into snakes. And then Moses throws his staff down, turns into a snake, and eats the other snakes. Now, if you take that story by face value, the Egyptian pharaoh had like warlocks working for him. In the Bible, it wasn't like Moses goes, that's fake. I saw him come out of your sleeve, and your stick, you'd like kicked it underneath Pharaoh's chair, and it was fake, but here, watch, God makes me make a real snake. That's not what happened. He throws his staff, and there's like 4 snakes rolling around on the floor, and everyone in Egypt, nobody blinks. They're like, it's a Tuesday, it's snake day. That's so bizarre. So does that mean that the Pharaoh actually if you take the story at face value, Christian or not, especially if you're a Christian, then you would say, whoa, there were like wizards walking around back then. What other magical stuff was happening? Because generally stuff in the Bible, like the mystical stuff, is from God. The burning bush, the chariot of fire, all that stuff is like divine. But this is like dudes throwing sticks and turning them into snakes. Fascinating stuff. So I guess there were wizards back then. And Moses was like saying, my God's more powerful than your God, but he didn't like call him out and say, that's fake. You totally faked that. No, he's like, I better make a bigger snake to eat their snakes. And then what happened to his snake? Now that I think about it, did it turn back into a staff? Like, was that snake sentient? What happened to that snake? Did it slither away and did he buy a new staff? What happened to his staff? Where's his staff at now? Anyways, I'm totally getting off topic. Maybe that should be its own story. Ephesian Grammata. These words are so ancient. Nobody knows what they are. Nobody knows what they mean. I'm researching it. There's a book that explains it. I read a review on the book. It's 115 pages. And the guy's like, yeah, this guy really has some interesting ideas. He goes, some people take a very literal approach. And this author had some really interesting ideas. And that was the review. I was like, oh, okay. Go to look up the book. It's $100. It's $100 for this 115-page book. It's totally out of print. Go on eBay. There's no copies available. Check that other couple book sites. No sites available. It could be somewhere on the internet, and I'll keep kind of looking around because I'm definitely intrigued. This is the interesting thing about spells like this, is that if you believe in things like, if you believe in any sort of magic or metaphysical or stuff like that, you could say that the words are magical, or you could say that the sound is magical, the vibration is magical. Because I was looking up this YouTube video and this woman was like, oh, it doesn't matter how you say these things. She mentioned the Ephesia Grammata, but she was just talking about spells in foreign languages. She goes, you can translate it to English or translate it to your language and it'll still have the same effect. And I don't think that's true. I think it would have, if you accept that spells are real, I think you have to say that the sounds themselves are what make them powerful, not necessarily the intent. For something this old, that maybe the very vocal frequency of saying these 6 words in combination affects the area around you and protects you. It could just be gibberish. It could just be something that put on the bottom of the statue, and then a bunch of other people put it on pouches and belts and things like that. Could be an ancient spell that is so powerful that people don't want other people to know about it. Or it could just be I guess the regular spell is kind of an oxymoron, but it could just be a spell that nobody's really examined. But again, it's so weird that people who are totally into paganism and magic and stuff like that, I thought I was going to find a ton of resources on this and blogs and pronunciation videos on YouTube, but nothing. Which makes me think not that it's necessarily being suppressed. It just reminds me that the world of the weird is so vast that incredibly interesting things get brushed under the rug. People always ask me, hey, how long do you think the show will last? Do you think there's enough stuff for the show to go on for a couple of years? I go, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm discovering new stuff all the time. New weird stories all the time. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.